Hello everyone, this is Tyler here. There are times that stereotypes are true and other times where they're not. And I'm going to discuss times that stereotypes are not true for guys living in Eastern Europe, especially within Russia, Ukraine. Okay, in recent years, in the past 15 to 20 years, many men have pursued relationships in Eastern European countries. They've went and lived in Eastern Europe, and then at other times they've gone there and then brought the person back, or other times the woman has came back to their home country to live. And this is very common nowadays. We've seen this so often with how globalized the world's becoming. International relationships and marriages are super common. I remember when I was younger, when I was in grade school, it was very much more of a novelty for a student to have a foreign parent. And when I was in school, for example, I had a student and his mother was from France. I also had teammates. I played ice hockey when I was younger, and I had teammates who had foreign parents. I had a teammate with a Czech parent, a Czech mother. I had another one whose dad was South African. I had another one whose mother, I believe, was Russian or Ukrainian. I don't recall at the moment. This was pretty uncommon at the time. It wasn't super uncommon, but it was more uncommon. Whereas nowadays it's much more common. And mind you, this was in Chicagoland area, so Chicago, very international. I imagine that if you went to cities, smaller towns at the time in the 90s, it would have been much less common even in those towns. Many people have developed this assumption that men are simply traveling to these foreign countries to find a wife or find a partner. While this may have been true 20 years ago, at the time being, this actually is often not the case. Many guys now are choosing to leave their respective country in the West for other reasons. This is a number one stereotype that people constantly encounter. In fact, I would argue and say that for some guys in their Western country, it may actually be easier finding a long-term partner than in some of the Eastern European countries. One example being in Estonia. That this country, for example, absolutely. This stereotype, though, obviously has become very perpetuated, and many guys out there, of course, it's something that they would love to have a relationship, possibly marriage in one of these countries. It's not always a primary reason of why they're living there, and this is a huge stereotype, and people often kind of go back to this. There's shows where guys living in a foreign country, or they bring someone back and they're always considered the loser, and they couldn't find a wife in their home country. But often this isn't the case, especially a guy who's living in that particular country. Now, a second major stereotype that I find often is that the guy couldn't be successful in their home country. This is so common, honestly. Many people have this misassumption that a guy couldn't be successful running a business enterprise or choosing a respective career like an engineer or doctor or teacher, whatever it may be, and that they simply had to leave and go to another country. And this is so far from the truth. In fact, there's been many guys out here nowadays who have actually re-established or reinvented themselves in foreign countries, who've built themselves in these countries such as China, Russia. There's one guy in particular, he's actually from South Africa. He lived in China for many years. He has a YouTube channel. He goes by the name Sir Pinza, and this guy actually became much more successful when he immigrated from South Africa to China, and he really made a name for himself in China. And in fact, so much so that eventually he moved to California with his wife. He became so well developed, and he established himself to that degree that he was able to go to the States with his wife. And this is a tough feat. I mean, many people who've gone through the visa process to legally become an immigrant in America understand this. This is not an easy feat. So he went from South Africa to China to the US. This guy was able to really improve where he was at from South Africa to where he got to in China, and now he's a pretty big YouTuber. He has grown kind of a lifestyle brand from his time in China. And many other guys, of course, they find careers for themselves in these countries. Yes, often guys do have to change their careers when they move abroad. I myself went from being in logistics to now being in financial sector. Also, of course, cinematography. And this is very common. Guys may have to kind of reinvent themselves. I will note though that I was working in the financial sector in logistics, so it was still within the financial area sector. And there's other people I know personally where they've kind of either transitioned into a different career or transitioned into a different career that was within the same category. It's became more common actually that guys have became better, more successful in the careers that after they've moved, they've reestablished themselves. So don't think that a guy is the loser that can't be established in their career in their home country, because this is often not the case. There's actually often too guys where they could be very successful in their home country. They could build a very strong business or grow their wealth a lot and become very affluential in the society they live, but choose not to because they just don't want to live that lifestyle. And they could be successful in their home country or in a different country. At the end of the day, talent is talent, and it's not necessarily going to matter one country to the next. And other times, the country this person moves to may actually be better for their long-term goals. A third misconception often is that guys tend to be very lazy and don't really apply themselves when they move to these countries. And this is actually not often the case. There's kind of this misunderstanding that these foreign people will just drink a lot and they get really trashed and just are like hooligans, but this is actually not the case. Many guys, in fact, probably live more disciplined and more focused, concentrated lifestyles in the foreign country than they do back at home. I can say for myself, I probably live in some ways more disciplined in Eastern Europe than when I was living in the States. That's also in conjunction with the fact I don't have a car here. I had a car when I was back in Chicago. I don't have a car here. Eventually I'll have a car here pretty soon now, but I don't have a car, and my whole lifestyle is absolutely very optimized for my career growth and because I have goals like year, 2 year, 3 year plans of where I want to be at. So I have to live a very disciplined lifestyle. And many other people are in the same boat as me. You of course have professional athletes, you have business professionals, engineers, people in different professions that do have to maintain a very disciplined and rigid lifestyle, unlike what people often are told back at home. Yes, there are absolutely people that do live in a very slothful, very lazy, and lackadaisical attitude or mindset. But really, people that last long term in foreign countries, these guys, they can't live that way. That type of mindset, you're not going to last very long in a foreign country. And that's a big myth, honestly. That's how a lot of the guys are. Not saying that you won't have cash flow, you won't have an income, you'll be destitute, honestly. And trust me, if you're destitute, if you're homeless, most people that are homeless in a foreign country don't last very long, especially when it's like a second or third world country. They may last for a few months and then they're gone, they leave. This is a fact. So just understand that. The people that live that way, typically, the guys doing that, are honestly kind of losers. They're losers for foreign people, and they're losers for, of course, domestic people. And I mean, there's different categories of people, and people conduct themselves in different ways in a foreign country. It's not just one and the same here. Another common misconception is that if you have an employer in a foreign country, this employer will value you highly and you're considered priority, that you're very highly respected. And I can't tell you how untrue this is. If you're an executive vice president for a big company and you continue in that type of work in a foreign country, absolutely, you'll be given 5-star treatment by that company, by the people you're around, everyone. You'll be treated extremely well. Environment though, where you're low on the totem pole, and this wasn't a company that you'd been working with for 20 years and you're just a typical employee, this is so far from the truth. In fact, you'd probably be more respected in your home country in the same kind of job position. I think often you probably are less respected right from the get-go. I can't tell you how many people on a personal level, like here in Estonia, guys, that they dealt with many problems, honestly, going into the workplace, and they performed very well, but there was just constant pressure, and there was an eye on them that wouldn't stop. They would put, I think, often much more pressure on these people, including my brother, than on the domestic people. Let's take another example here. Look at professional athletes that are playing in foreign countries. Some of these guys are exceptionally high paid people. There's, of course, there's Jimmer, who played in China for the pro basketball team. I think it was in Shanghai. He was making like $2.5 million a year, I believe. It was for 2 or 3 years. He had constant pressure to perform. There's other basketball and professional soccer or football players where they get these monthly or year-by-year contracts, and they have to meet very high expectations to maintain their status on the team, to receive their paycheck. And sometimes their paychecks are late. They get paid the money they're owed. And these are guys making $500,000, $800,000, $2 million. In China, some of these pro football players have made up to $30 or $40 million a year. These guys are under huge pressure, tremendous pressure to perform. They're looked at, they're highly scrutinized, of course, due to the fact that they're a pro athlete, but also the fact they're a foreign person. And the management, the ownership has to ensure that these guys are worth their value, worth their weight. They keep a very tight watch on these guys during the time they're on these teams. And like I said, going back to in companies or teachers that work in international schools, these people also, they have to maintain very high standards. People that work as English teachers in bilingual schools in foreign countries, yes, some of them get paid very well, but at the same time, they have to absolutely meet high performance expectations for both themselves and the students. They have to be at certain benchmark metrics. This is just the reality. So often these employees or workers, professionals, contractors working in foreign countries probably perform on average at a higher level than they would in their home country because they are under more scrutiny and they probably have to perform consistently higher to maintain their jobs most of the time. Unless it's like an American that's working for the government, like an embassy or consulate or some kind of diplomat, these type of people, they can pretty much do whatever, and they're going to maintain the tenure of their job durations for however long they're given. These people can do anything, but those are really the exception here, along with maybe those vice presidents of companies, international companies. Everyone else, for the most part, is going to be under a constant pressure. It's going to be challenging, and this is just a fact. And the last area is income. Often people think that the foreign people living in foreign countries are making a lot less income. They're not doing as well financially, and I can tell you this is often not the case. There are many people. This kind of goes back to the area I mention about careers, is that many people actually do remarkably well income-wise and are able to really grow their wealth portfolio. It's very common if someone becomes very specialized and very well regarded in their area that they'll actually make more money in that country than the country they came from. This is not uncommon, and keep in mind some of these countries, the average income could be much lower. It could be just 20% of the income of the country that they came from. The person may still be making more income than in their home country. And so this is not as uncommon as you may think. I personally have known of several cases where the person made 3, 4, sometimes 10 times more than what they were making back home. They were able to just continue to grow and move forward in their respective careers. So this is kind of my take on this, and this is just the first video here, but I look forward to your feedback below, and thank you.